Hi, well, welcome to another show with Linda and Laura, except Laura is unable to be here today, but we do have two wonderful guests with us today. We have Captain Kelly Furtado from the Fall River Police Department, and we have Mr. David Cabral, who worked as an auxiliary police, but he did a lot of other very creative things. I haven't known him as long as I've known Kelly. Kelly, I go way back to knowing her father, who was a police officer, Officer Sear, who was one of the best. I had great relationship with him. Dave, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background?
All right, I'm retired United States Army and retired Department of Defense. I served for a total of 40 years in the government. I was a counterintelligence special agent, human intelligence officer. Served in Korea for almost 30 years, 6 years in Japan. Then I also had time in Iraq, Bosnia, and Kuwait. Now I'm a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, continuing to serve.
Wow, 40 years. You must have seen a lot.
Quite a bit.
So then when you came back, you decided that you were going to be participate in the auxiliary police department. Correct. What made you want to do that?
Well, I mean, I took a year off. I retired in 2015. Took a year off and decided that, okay, sitting at home was not for me. I saw a poster, on City Hall that talked about the Fall River Auxiliary, and it says, it's similar to the military. I mean, not exactly, but it's still something that, I can understand. So I figured that's probably the best volunteer service for me. So I signed up, went to the training, and then for about 5 years, helped out where I could. Good.
Now, with this new Police Reform Act, auxiliary police they say that they can't participate, although I don't see anything in the bill that specifically talks to that. And some locations have kept the auxiliary, but maybe just a name change. And the service that we had received from auxiliary police is clearly invaluable. I know Carlos Duart, who worked as auxiliary police. I saw him at every feast, every festival. He's put in like 27.5 years, which was incredible. But to Captain Furtado, what do we do now when we really, really need men and women to help out?
It's been very difficult. So I was assigned this task to put this volunteer unit together. However, it's difficult. We've only gotten 2 applications since we started this drive. It's hard to even fill a paying position, never mind a volunteer position, But it is beneficial, not only emotionally to people, because it makes you feel good to when you volunteer, but for the younger people out there, it's a nice thing to put on their resumes. It's nice to for applying for colleges and things like that. But it also, for the older generations, it gives them, some purpose in life. My husband recently retired, and it's driving him crazy because you go 100 miles an hour through your life, and you work, take care of kids, and then all of a sudden the kids are out. There's no work. There's only so many closets you can clean or so many projects you can do. So, you look for that little purpose. I did tell him I was going to make him volunteer to be in charge of the unit if he keeps acting up.
Do you give him a list of things to do?
Yeah.
My husband and I retired more or less at the same time. And it was very strange having him home all the time. And I reflected back to when my parents both retired. My father would come and complain. My mother never wanted to go out. She wanted to clean windows and change curtains. And my mother would come up and complain that my father never wanted to stay home. He always wanted to be out. I said, I'm sure, you'll get a niche. And they did. They ended up getting a niche and doing things. Dave, how can we get more people to want to be auxiliary police officers?
That's a good question, and especially in today's world. Part of it is appreciation. The military had a strong tradition of volunteerism. In fact, overseas, without volunteers, they couldn't do anything. So they went out of their way, made a program for volunteers to recognize them. Not everyone volunteers for recognition, but they do want to have people say, thank you, we appreciate what you're doing. So once a year they did a ceremony, they had awards. The Army even made medals for volunteerism. So many, so many hours of volunteer, depending on what you did, they would put you in. Then you'd have the medals that would be awarded to you, then they would have a Volunteer of the Year. And as people start as people start understanding that your effort is appreciated, more and more might sign up. And a lot of the veterans, they get out and they say, "What are we going to do? What can I do? What would be interesting to me?" And for me, it was okay. The police, working with them, that was one thing that I understood quite well.
So you did say, when we spoke earlier, you said the auxiliary being there, we were the eyes and ears of police too.
That's correct.
That
yeah.
we were there to support our police officers. And that's something that I don't find society does a lot today.
Right.
Because when you're in crisis and you need a police officer, you call, you expect them to come. But then, everybody's out there criticizing without having all of the facts of knowing what to do. And like any other job, there are good and there are bad. But I have to say that we have more good than bad in the Fall River Police Department.
I agree.
And, it's heartbreaking. I did give citations as well as the mayor. I didn't even know that you were there, Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see you because you could have come up and given a little talk too and maybe encourage some other people to be able to come. Would you be able to get some of, what surprised me? Let me tell you this. Surprised me that former Chief Jack Souza, I just had them write a letter if they didn't want to come over, and he wrote a letter. I had no idea, and I knew Chief Souza when he was chief. I was on the council then. I had no idea that he started out being an auxiliary police officer.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
I was like, wow, I had no idea. But a lot of the people that were in the auxiliary police, they're already trained.
Right.
What would we be able to do to get them to come back on board?
That's a good question. A lot of people have moved on. Like myself, as soon as they disbanded the unit, said, I just can't sit home and do nothing. And then I did the research and found out about the U.S. Coast Guard. And the deeper I got into it, I said, this is for me. The people that I worked with, they moved on. One man, as you know, went to Rehoboth, and he's working with their police department over there.
And we can't do something to pull them back?
At this point, you'd have to ask each individual.
Right.
But it's hard to say. It really is hard to say they moved on.
Was some of the concerns the naming of this unit?
Well, some of it is tradition, and again, military is big tradition. So yeah, you change the name of the unit. You said that, by going out there, you got liability, and then the new unit has the same liability.
Right.
So
Yep.
you're sending a mixed message out to them that says, okay, you're not good enough, but this new one is. I mean, if you go back to tradition, I guess part of it, the concern was they look like police. All right, I can buy that. But you can just keep the old name, say just auxiliary unit. You can put a new patch on, if that's what you want to do, and try to make it look like they are part of the department. We never had policing powers, never. We were originally set up, to support the police in times of emergency. Hurricanes, you name it, whatever the emergency may be. Let's say you have a major oil spill somewhere, and they needed police to cordon off areas. Well, as you know, the Fall River Police don't have that many people to do that. So you would call up the auxiliaries. They'll take the outer cordon, start diverting the traffic away while the police handled.
I think during Hurricane Bob, we used some auxiliaries during that time.
And
Paired them up with the police officers.
And they even used them in the shelters that they put out.
Yep.
I mean, again, they had no policing powers, but they were there. You had a uniform. People say, all right, we have a police presence, so that calms down some people.
It does.
And then if you have a problem, we had radios, so we can call the regulars, say, hey, we need help.
Now, when did auxiliary policing and, emergency management, that started back in the 50s?
Yes.
Yes, yep.
Under the Massachusetts Civil Defense Act
Yep.
of 1950 is what officially started it. And it was both for fire auxiliaries and police auxiliaries. The fire kind of morphed into the emergency management, but they're focused right now on the fire side, and emergency management is a greater piece of the whole. The police have a part of that because they have to work together with the fire and whatever emergency organization that comes in, so everyone has a role. And that's where the police auxiliaries can
Right.
come in and
Yep.
help. Because you need to be able to, the police needs to be able to control them, organize them, dispatch them, and they support police type
Right, yep.
activities.
Captain Furtado, what are the trainings that they would have to take, and how long does that training take?
It doesn't take very long. They now it's just some traffic control training, along with CPR, AED, things of that nature, first aid, first responder things, along with some required trainings like the non-bias training, things like that, and things that they can't get into as far as the law is concerned. So apparently, from what I gather from speaking to numerous people about posts, so like everything else, when you read something, everybody has a different interpretation of what it says, you know. So the Post, when they said do away with they don't want anything to do with auxiliary or reserve officers. They have to go to full-time academy. I believe that is because some of the smaller towns, like in the Western Mass, they don't call their reserve or part-time officers reserves. They call them auxiliaries. So Post didn't want any confusion, you know, where around here you see more of the auxiliary are the volunteers, you know. So I think that that's where some confusion, maybe a renaming. I think that it just went so fast. The Post in implementing it in chiefs just tried to be, you know, compliant with it right away. You know, that the SROs had to, that was a whole, and we have a lot of SROs here, right? We have not 9 or 10, three different school districts. So they had to get them compliant, and the auxiliaries, right away it was like, okay, we can't have auxiliaries. But then after talking to Post and a bunch of other departments and stuff, is that they came up with, oh, you know, let's just rename them, you know. And so that was tossed around for a little while. So it was just kind of like a mess for a little bit when all this Post came out, and the certification of police officers. So it was just like a lot of stuff dumped in all the departments' laps. So it was really difficult.
So if we would have renamed them right away, they would have still all been here.
Probably,
He would
yes.
have had a core, that's correct.
Yes, yep.
If you had not disbanded them and kind of moved them along and say, hey, turn in your uniforms, see you later, you still would have had a core of people, and you could have built up right from then and there. Yeah, if it was a different name, you would have been able to get the recruitments out. You still had a cadre of you know, long-term leaders.
And just the experience. I've been tasked, like I said, with putting this together, but I mean, this is the first for me, so it's kind of going to be like a trial and error. It would have been a huge help to me if I could have gotten some of the experienced auxiliaries back, you know. And to what Mr. Cabral was speaking of, with recognition and appreciation. So if you're not going to pay somebody, it's a volunteer service, you have to appeal to their sense of honor and goodwill, and so you do that by showing appreciation, which Deputy Cullen was fantastic with. You know, when I was very young, I'd be like, why do they have all that rank in the auxiliary? Like, but you know, as you get older, you realize what, because that is showing appreciation. That's showing, hey, all your dedicated years of service, you know, you get a promotion too. There is a pecking order, and they deserve that, you know.
Very military-like.
Yeah, it's very, very, very important to have something to be prideful of, you know.
Like auxiliaries don't carry guns.
No.
But
Nope.
they would have a baton, or they would have
Yes.
handcuffs.
Yes.
But did you ever handcuff anybody?
No, auxiliaries never handcuff anyone. We only carried them to give to the regular police officer should they need it. Because sometimes you got one officer showing up at a scene,
And
there's 3
that
or 4
has
people.
been helpful. We have utilized things like that.
How about some of the students here at Bristol Community College that are into law enforcement, criminal justice, recruiting some of them.
Oh, I would love that, because then they would get an insight into what police work is, or being around the police department, the police jargon. So if they're looking to go in law enforcement and they already know like a bunch
Yeah.
of stuff, it's so much easier when they go through a police academy and get hired by a police department, because they know the lingo, which is huge. It's like nothing
You hear
else, anywhere else. So if they get that, that's such a leg up to young people who are coming on the department. You know, there are many police officers right now that were auxiliaries first.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, there are. I was trying to go through some of the auxiliary paperwork, and I came across a box of old IDs. So Deputy Cullen was a stickler. That man is so organized, you know. He had boxes of old IDs, so he would make you turn in your ID. If you moved on, you know, some people moved on to full-time work, or they just couldn't do volunteer as much anymore. So, and I was going through all the pictures. I probably have about 25 pictures of a lot of guys that are on right now, like when they were like 18, 19 years old, you know. So I was like, oh, I didn't realize all of these guys that are still working right now started off as auxiliaries. You know, it was nice to see that.
Yeah, I think that maybe people that are into criminal justice programs here, I think it's great that, like you said, Captain Furtado, that they would get a taste of what it's like out there. Mr. Cabral, do you think there's any way, you know all the former auxiliary police, you think there's any way to help Captain Furtado do this? To pull it together, to look at what is a name that people are going to feel honored by, not just a yellow jacket that says traffic, but a shirt. What did Framingham do? I just saw recently, they just have a pullover shirt with khaki pants,
Right.
and a little emblem, and I think it.
They have a patch on their shirt and a patch on their hat, and they also have the full vest, the yellow vest, traffic vest, with a
Right.
patch on that. They went to the name, I believe, Community Volunteer Unit. I think that's what CVU.
Yeah.
But some of the other, smaller towns did keep their auxiliary police. They still kept the old name, because when I did the research on the reform law and I talked to Chief Hicks, none of them, if you didn't have any policing powers, you know what I'm saying, they didn't care. It was
Right.
It was just now people jump to the conclusion, oh, you look like a policeman, and therefore, you're bad. Okay, I mean, I get it. So if you want to change the uniform a little bit, you could have changed the uniform. Still kept, like you said, still kept some of the uniform we wore was not really.
Was very nice.
Yeah, it was not
so
really.
squared away, and that says a lot too. You know, you're there showing that you're part of the community, you're
Exactly.
part of the police department, you care about your city. And so the way you present yourself is
Exactly.
important, and always squared away.
And you could have
all
changed
the
the
time.
patch. You could have changed the patch.
Yeah.
If the cap that you had was real concern. I mean, these days a lot of people went with a baseball cap. So you could have changed that, kept the blue uniform, changed the patch, kept the belt that they need to have, and you were still part of it. Have the regular
Yep.
yellow vest with the other
I
patch
agree.
on it.
I agree with all of it.
And that's unit pride, actually, or organizational pride.
Very, very prideful. Yep. I agree with everything Mr. Cabral says. We've talked about this at
How
once.
can we get them? I mean, in Fall River, I know I was at a meeting once and I said, I really hate the way that some of the police are being treated. I mean, a police officer pulls you over, says, give me your license and registration. Give him your license and registration. Why, why argue? Because when I need a police officer to come, I expect that they're going to show up and they're going to help me. And I just find that we have, not only for police, just in general, society has had a lot of, there's just no more respect. The disrespect is out of control. You don't hold the door for an elderly person coming out. And then, you know, when I have, now I'm an elderly person, when I had this young man, he opened the door the other day and he held it. I said, oh, thank you so much.
Right,
You are
exactly.
a gentleman.
Yep.
It's like, because you don't get that all the time. But I think that Post helped with some stuff, didn't help with other stuff. Another thing, like Captain Furtado said, we can't get people to come in to be police officers. You know, if it's the pay, if it's that, they just don't want to do the job because they don't want to be treated with no respect. Just like auxiliary doesn't want to feel like they're not respected and needed. It's the same thing. But in Fall River, we have so many feasts and festivals that go on. And we're not going to be able to have police officers doing details at all of these. First of all, you don't have the manpower. Policing is not today what it was years ago. So you get on a shift and you're one call to another, to another, to another. By union contract, you need to have at least one day off, preferably two. But they want that downtime to kind of regroup. You're going to burn people out, and when they're working so much like that, mistakes can be made, which isn't their fault. It's just exhaustion and writing this report and this report and this report. And then you go into court, and that report has to say, well, you didn't say what color Mr. Jones' sneakers were. It's just ridiculous. But in Fall River, I look around and I see the water department got lots of money to do the lead pipe services. Route 79 is going on. We've put a lot of money into streets and sidewalks. And we need to have details at all of these. Yet Post, when you're 70, you can't do details anymore. I mean, I know some police officers, Mitch, Officer Stroney, they're retired and maybe they're already 70, but I mean, these people are at the gym, they're physical. Maybe you just need to get a letter from your doctor that you're
That's a good
able to
idea.
do this.
Yep.
You know, maybe somebody younger can't do as good a job as somebody older because
Of experience.
of experience.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think that that has really crippled us. And I don't know where we're going to get all these officers to do additional details.
We're at a different time, I guess. I will say one thing, the people that run the feast and stuff, they took care of the auxiliaries. They showed their appreciation for us and made us feel, hey, thank you for coming out and helping us. Yeah, so that
Well,
was.
they did, because I know they always fed you.
Yeah, they,
I know the Great Feast of the Holy Ghost. My husband was a correction officer, and he took out crews. And I can't tell you, there was no inmate that didn't want to go set up because they had steak sandwiches, they
Yep,
had
there was
shrimp
one feed you.
Mozambique. I mean, they, you know, they got a good meal.
and it's not just a good meal. They came out, thanked us.
Oh,
hey,
yeah, they do.
Thank you for coming, or, helping us out. Without you, it would be a little bit difficult. So as an auxiliarist, I did appreciate the people running the feast, the people that were at the feast, all, thanking us.
Yeah, that is so true because they had the Romero March through the city.
Right.
That was very difficult for us to cover. So I even went out there, me and Lieutenant Pacheco, to help out, and the several people came up and and thanked us. Yeah, so that it did make it worth it.
Captain Furtado, how many police officers do you need when the Romeros come through?
Oh, so we tried something a little different this year because we reached out to New Bedford. So New Bedford just does 2 cruises, one in the front and one in the back, which I was a little skeptical of. But I'm not sure. Are you going down straight streets? Are you avoiding major intersections? So those are a lot of variables that we didn't know. So we did plan on just 2 cruises at first. But then as we monitored it, because it was the first time since COVID happened that they had the Romero's, the Lodge Romero walk. So people from New Bedford were coming down, so it was growing from like 100 people to, I think they had like 400 or 500 people. So we ended up utilizing the motorcycle unit, but it was like last minute, so we had the motorcycles, they're all fantastic. So they came in right away. So we probably had about 10 people with utilizing 4 of the bikes. And we had to, now that lasted, they started that at 6:30 in the morning and didn't end till 9:30, quarter of 10 at night. So then we had to supply a switch of shifts, you know, to give guys a break. So yeah, probably over 20 officers altogether with a rotation just for that. That was quite large.
Wow, that's...
Yeah.
And when the auxiliaries did the Romeros, we had about 15, 20 people. Of course, we also had the shifts. You know.
Yeah, that was
some people
long.
were willing to work the complete time, but some people going to do 4 hours or 5 hours, and then they swapped out. But we always had enough to cover it.
Captain Furtado, is there an age limit for someone to work as an auxiliary? Is it
No.
18?
It's 18 to start. So, but no, as long as you're capable, we'll take any. I'll take anyone. I would like to. My whole thought on the volunteer unit is to start off as, you know, doing traffic and different things, and then maybe expand with that. I know that a lot of small towns have utilized volunteers forever, and what they usually what they do is reach out to the community. A lot of retired people, like I was saying, looking for purpose, looking for something just to do a couple days a week. Professional people involved, their careers were IT, cybersecurity, you name it, marketing, all kinds of different things. So it would be nice to eventually grow this unit into something where maybe we can utilize this services of professional people just looking for something to do, along with the harbor master and the harbor patrol. You know, Jose Barbosa is doing a great job as the harbor master, but believe it or not, it's a lot of work that we didn't realize, because we didn't, you know, if you're not involved with that, you don't know what you do. But there is a lot for him to do, so he could use the help. Along with that, sometimes he's on the boat by himself. That's worrisome to me. I'm always like, Jose, make sure you text me when you go out. Make sure you text me when you come back in, you know? So it would be nice to get like a volunteer or an assistant for him to help him out on the boat, you know?
Before we run out of time, I'd like to make one more comment. What I found very helpful was having within the auxiliary experienced people kind of like a leadership position, a leadership structure, because many times I had those experienced people come back me up before a regular could come. So I would talk to my auxiliary sergeant or lieutenant or even the captain. If we had a problem, they had the experience, they had the position, leadership position, and they were able to take care of things. That helped, because the regular sometimes just can't be there.
Right, exactly. Or there's an emergency, we get called out somewhere. It's nice to have somebody with the experience to take over, you know, or not to tie us up with meetings.
Well, this comes to the end of the segment. Thank you both.
Thank you.
My sinuses are killing me. But please, call Captain Furtado if you're interested. Help us out. Be part of the positivity of our city. Thank you.
Thank you.